We got crushed. This has been the coldest winter my plants have ever endured, and the level of cold damage is unprecedented. On this video, I'm going to show you how my cold-sensitive fruit trees fared the record cold this winter. Warning, it is not pretty. But there is a silver lining. The extreme cold this winter revealed that growing citrus trees in ground in Zone 7 is not only possible, but easy. At the end of this video, I will reveal a citrus tree that survived single-digit cold without any protection at all. If growing citrus trees in ground is a dream of yours, this video will prove that you can do it.
If you're new to the channel, please subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and check out my Amazon store and Spreadshop links in the video description for everything I use in my garden and awesome custom apparel and gear.
I live on the southeastern coast of North Carolina, Zone 8B, just outside of Wilmington. This is my 8th winter in my home, and we have never seen cold like this. So far this winter, we have had the heaviest snowfall I have ever experienced here in North Carolina, with snow drifts in excess of 1 foot deep, 41 nights below freezing, 9 nights below 20 degrees, which is as many nights below 20 as the last 7 winters combined, and an all-time low of 9.7 degrees. Yes, we hit single digits this year. We had a Zone 7B winter here in Zone 8B. I am growing 10 citrus trees and 2 avocado trees in ground. According to conventional wisdom, this can't be done here. They're not supposed to grow where I live, so I've devised innovative cold protection methods to help them through our freezing cold winters. Well, this unprecedented cold has challenged these sensitive trees beyond anything they have ever experienced, pushing my cold protection methods to their absolute limit. Well, it's been 2 weeks since the worst of the cold has passed, and it's finally warm enough that I can remove my plant covers, so let's see what survived and what didn't. Over the course of this video, you will see my various cold protection methods in action. I don't want to spend too much time talking about them in this video because it's beyond the scope, so I will place a link both above and down in the video description to a comprehensive guide that will explain to you exactly how to build these cold protection methods and how they work. We will begin this video in the rear of my property because these trees in the rear are the most vulnerable. They are very far away from my house, so I have no means of running electricity this far out to them to protect them, and they are also some of my youngest trees. I have 5 citrus trees and 1 avocado, and none of them are all that big, so they had to bear the full brunt of the cold. And all these trees had to protect them are these 60-gallon pickle barrels full of water. Now, to give you a brief overview on cold protection, fruit trees do not generate heat, unlike human bodies. So when you place a blanket over them or some kind of cover, all you do is prevent frost formation. That blanket will freeze completely through, and the temperature underneath the blanket will be exactly the same as the temperature outside, unless you put a warming source underneath. And the theory is these water barrels have an oceanic effect because water has a very high specific heat. The ground and the air has a low specific heat, at least the surface of the ground. So as soon as the sun sets, the air and the ground surface loses heat rapidly. But if you have these black pickle barrels full of water that are sitting charging up in the sun all day, well, when you place a cover on top of them and you lock these barrels underneath the cover next to your trees, they continue to radiate heat all night long, just like an ocean would. That is why beaches and lakes have a warmer microclimate right around the surface of the water than miles inland. So I'm using water's natural ability to hold heat and slowly radiate it. And every single day when the sun comes back out, it recharges the barrels and they continue to radiate throughout the night. And that gives me substantial cold protection, as you will see right here. Typical cold fronts only last 3 or 4 days, so when the cold sweeps down, these barrels do a really good job at discharging heat for a few days, and then I can take the covers off and they can warm back up and recharge. This was an absolute worst case scenario because we were 20 degrees or more below average for nearly a month straight, and I had to leave my covers on for 5 full weeks, and it wasn't warming up at in the daytime enough to adequately recharge the barrels. So this is the worst performance I could possibly get out of the barrels. And still, when we had an all-time low of 9.7 degrees Fahrenheit, I recorded a minimum of 20.5 degrees underneath here in this wireless thermometer right here. So that means that even with these water barrels operating as poorly as they could, I still got 10.8 degrees of protection from them. So it never dropped below 20.5 degrees underneath those plant covers in that entire 5-week miserable period. And here are the results. My Stewart avocado right here is by far the most cold sensitive tree of anything that I'm growing in my entire yard, and it is not even 2 full years old. So the poor guy got smoked. You can see that the leaves are burnt to a crisp up top where the plant cover was resting on it, and the outer leaves were also smoked. But here's the good news. The trunk is fine. It is green. Even when you go out to the lateral buds, while there is some damage to the leaves, the actual terminal buds there are just fine. And of course, we are totally okay as we work our way down the tree all the way to the graft. So while it did get beaten up, as long as the worst of the cold is behind us, this tree is going to push out new growth. It's going to drop those leaves. I'll have to prune off some dead growth, and the tree should come back. It'll be a little tired, but I fully expect this tree to be just fine for the new season. It actually survived, folks. So now let's look at the citrus trees, and my Cara red navel orange here, it got crisped up where the leaves were touching the front of the plant cover, so that's obviously going to drop off. But the rest of the tree is totally fine, sandwiched in between these two pickle barrels. So no issues there outside of a little bit of a superfluous pruning. Then we have my Meiwa kumquat. And the Meiwa kumquat took almost no damage in terms of the plant itself. Looks like maybe the leaves got a little bit scorched at the bottom. Now what is interesting is this fruit that was pressing up against the plant cover, well, that froze through. So these fruits right here are completely destroyed and mushy. So they're going to have to get thrown out. But as we go closer closer to the water barrels, these fruits are totally fine. So that kumquat right there, perfectly edible. Then next to that kumquat is my brown select Satsuma, which is the most cold hardy of the trees planted here. And again, looks like it took a little bit of surface damage, but very minimal. So the leaves that are up against the water barrels, no surprise, took no damage towards the back of the fence. My Moro blood orange, which is not nearly as cold hardy, this poor guy got absolutely wrecked. So the whole front of this poor little Moro blood orange, this is going to defoliate. And it looks like that we actually got some full-on damage to the tips as well. So this is going to need a reshaping, but all of the wood closer to the center of the tree is fine. No harm done, so we'll have to give it a sizable pruning, but it's going to come back. And then we have my Eustace limequat, which has only been in the ground for a little bit more than a year, and I had feared the worst because it's so young, but looks like it only got a little bit of tip burn out towards the edge and in the front where it was contacting the water barrel. It is totally unharmed, and we actually have one, this fruit is mush. So this fruit, no good right here. It froze through. You can see it's almost like a little squishy ball. So that'll have to get thrown out. But these are the least protected plants in my entire yard. They had no heat, no electricity, and just using the specific radiative heat of those water barrels, everything survived. Some are a little bit more banged up than others, but I'm happy to report we have no casualties. Next up is my Sugar Bell citrus tree, and because this is in my front yard up against my doorway, I did not put a big black water barrel up against it for protection, so I had to come up with an alternate means of protecting my tree. Because I'm up against my house, I can run electricity to this tree, so I have chosen to outfit it with a couple of strands of old-style C9 incandescent Christmas lights because they use 175 watts of power each, and they radiate a ton of heat. You must use outdoor rated incandescent lights for this to work. You cannot use LEDs because LEDs do not radiate heat. So what I did was I turned on the different strands of incandescent Christmas lights and I doubled up 2 plant covers on them to lock in as much of that warmth as possible. And using the incandescent Christmas lights, when we fell down to 9.7 degrees, my tree fell to an absolute minimum of 17.8 degrees. Underneath 18 degrees. This was my coldest tree in the whole yard. So it took the worst cold, even worse than the stuff in the rear property. And those lights gave me an 8.1 degree temperature advantage over the ambient. And this tree faces due north, so it takes the full brunt of the north wind. So this should go to show you just how incredibly cold hardy this tree is. 18 degrees, and while it did get crisped on this one side and it's a bit beaten up, the only thing damaged is the leaves. There is no damage at all to the branches. So I'm really not going to have to prune anything back. I can just let the leaves naturally drop off and the plant should repopulate. And the wild thing is, as I come on this side is completely and totally unharmed. So just beautiful on this side that was more insulated from the cold and is east facing because my house was acting as a windbreak. So this tree pretty much got slammed and it really looks good. I'm so happy with the way it performed. When I saw 17.8 degrees, I had feared the worst, and I'm so happy to see that none of my fears came true. This tree ultimately sailed through the cold, a little banged up, but again, in 2 or 3 months, as it pushes new growth and I do a little bit of superfluous pruning, you're not even going to notice anymore. But that sugar bell wasn't my biggest fear. I was way more concerned about this little Excalibur red lime that I had planted only about 2 or 3 months earlier, and it never got a chance to establish itself. So all I had on this tree was a couple strands of 100 incandescent mini lights and a double plant jacket. So I had feared the worst. But you know what? Just using these incandescent mini lights that you see right here all over this little tree, well, guess what? It looks like it took no damage. I mean, it did get defoliated in an earlier freeze when I didn't give it as much protection, but then I added that second strand of lights, and wow, 9.7 degrees, it is still green, it's holding on to its leaves. In fact, if I look closer, it even has a little tiny fruit on it. I mean, I'm pretty sure it'll fall off, but happy to report this plant is completely fine. But now let's go to the original 3 subtropical cold sensitive trees that I planted in my yard. Now, these have the most protection. They have the most primo spot in my whole yard because they get the radiative heat of the south wall of my house that blocks all of the north wind, and I'm doubling up cold protection with water barrels and incandescent Christmas lights. So in theory, these should have the greatest shot of being unharmed in this level of cold. So we'll start with my Owari Satsuma, and I have to admit this is going to be a little bit heartbreaking. Now, my Owari Satsuma is ironically the most cold hardy of any of the trees I've showed you so far, and it's also the first cold sensitive tree that I had planted in ground. So this one in theory is the most resilient to cold, and in the 8 years I've lived here, it has never taken any significant cold damage. So for that reason, it does not have a black water barrel. I only have incandescent lights on it. And I'm sorry to say, this tree got smoked worse than any of my other trees. Now, it is fine. It is going to recover. And the good news is it is amply dropping its leaves. Leaf drop is a very good thing because leaf drop is a result of the tree being alive and pushing off those old dead leaves and forcing out new growth. So you actually want to see your tree a couple of weeks after cold damage drop all of its leaves naturally. If the tree holds on to its leaves, that means it's probably dead and not pushing new growth. But that being said, oh man, my poor tree up here is going to need a toupee. It's showing lots and lots of bald spots. It is ugly. It is unfortunate. I didn't think this would happen to this tree of all trees. Oof, hard for me to watch. But the good news is, as ugly as this looks, you will notice that the vast majority of the branches are okay. The core of the branches are just fine. So It's going to drop a lot of leaves, but come April or May, when it gets consistently warm, it's going to push out new growth. And it's very important that you don't do any kind of pruning when you see cold damage like this, because the tree is under severe stress, and pruning actually makes things worse. It just stresses it out more. So you want to give this at least 2 months. So right now it's the middle of February. I'm not going to touch this tree until at least April, maybe not even May, and clean it up once the cold damage spreads to its maximum and I have all new leaves. So my poor tree did get crisped, but it is alive and it's going to be fine in the long run. My Lila avocado was a great surprise. In this little structure I built for it with the incandescent lights and the water barrels, this thing sailed through the cold, relatively speaking. When we dropped to 9.7 degrees, my avocado stayed at 27.1 degrees with the incandescent lights and the water barrel. That is an incredible 17.4 degree temperature advantage. So I'm not surprised that this tree basically sailed through. Now, up where some of the flowers were pressing against the cover, the flowers did get killed. So we're not going to get any avocados there. We also have some damage low on the tree. But again, it's going to push through that. Closer internally in the tree, we still have some flowers. These flowers are probably going to be okay, and it's putting out all new growth inside. So a lot of these flower buds haven't opened yet. We're not going to have as good of a harvest as we could have, but as it warms up, it's going to push out flowers, it's going to push out new growth, and this tree is going to be okay in the long run. Hopefully we'll still be able to get a couple avocados this year. The biggest surprise is my Meyer lemon. This is the closest to unharmed of any of my citrus trees. Now, it does have a water barrel and incandescent lights, but I can't believe how little cold damage is on this tree, because it's not nearly as hardy as my Owari. So it has a little bit of crisping at the bottom, and it does have just a little bit of bronzing up top on a few leaves. Looks like some new growth right here died back a little bit. But what's really incredible is the number of blooms on this tree. Look at it. There must be hundreds of blooms on it. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if the cold stress actually makes this thing bloom like crazy, because I have noticed that cold stress, as long as it doesn't get super cold, does cause some citrus to bloom. So I'm beyond thrilled with how this tree performed. So that goes to show you the power of the water barrel and the Christmas lights. I mean, combined together, they're just the perfect 1-2 punch, the perfect combination of cold protection. So far, while some trees are definitely better than others, everything is alive, and I'm just so thankful for that. So while we definitely got dinged up a little bit and some plants are in worse shape than others, everything is going to eventually recover. Some things are going to come back immediately and I should get a good harvest. Other things, they may take a year off. We'll see what happens. But what I'm going to show you next is the biggest surprise of any of my trees, because I have a citrus tree that is growing out in the open, due facing north in my yard, that has gotten no protection ever. So it took the full brunt of 9.7 degrees and the north wind without any sort of cover or protection at all. And it's doing pretty well. The citrus tree that you are looking at right here is an incredible cold hardy hybrid citrus called Ichang Lemon. This tree has been growing in my front yard for about 3 years, and I have never protected it once. It takes the full force of the north wind, and while it is a little bit banged up, there's definitely a little bit of cold damage on the leaves. Even the new growth up top, which is tender, is completely and totally unharmed. So as soon as it warms up, those leaves are going to drop and it's going to push all new growth. And this tree, come May or June, you're never going to know that it was ever enduring any kind of cold. When I first moved into this house, I planted a trifoliate orange, and it was a nightmare to manage. So I cut the tree down and I grafted on some cuttings from an Ichang lemon. And that is what you see growing right here. This is an Ichang lemon, and it is, again, completely unharmed from the cold that you see right here. It is doing great. Here is why this is so important. Because we got down to 9 degrees and I did not protect my tree, that means this citrus tree can survive unprotected all the way down to the Zone 7B, Zone 8A line. So if that means that you can grow this tree without any protection at all on those lines with those types of winter, if you actually protect it the way I showed you how I do my other trees in this video, that means that it's entirely possible to grow a citrus tree like this all the way down to, I don't know, maybe the Zone 6B, 7A line. So if you've ever wanted to grow citrus in ground and you think it's impossible because you're in Zone 6 or 7, this one is a real contender if you're willing to protect it. And while the Achang lemon is very cold hardy, it's still not the most cold hardy. On top of the Achang lemon, you can also add the Prague Satsuma, the Yutsu, and the Sudachi. So all 4 of those different citrus trees, you can grow them possibly all the way down to Zone 6 if you do things like get them grafted onto dwarfing trifoliate rootstock, which has very small roots. You can plant them up against the south-facing wall of your house, and then you cover them with incandescent lights. You give them a water barrel, and then you put a plant jacket over them like I've showed you in my cold protection tutorial. You can grow these citrus, I don't know, the sky is the limit. I mean, Yutsu is known to survive all the way down to 0 degrees once mature, unprotected. So we can talk about winters that get below 0, into the negatives, and you may be able to grow citrus. This video more or less proves that. And if you're wondering how my fig trees fared, I mean, I feared the worst with single-digit temperatures and all that ice and snow. I'm happy to report that they're doing surprisingly well. My fig trees received 0 protection, zip, 0, nada. I did nothing to them, and I'm happy to report that I don't see any cold damage on any of my in-ground trees. And I think the reason why that happened is because it's been such a brutally cold winter, and the cold hit so early this year, well before Christmas. I think that these trees were just in a perfectly dormant state. So I'm not seeing any wrinkling of the wood. The buds are looking good for the most part. So I'm happy to report that I think that the ultra consistently cold winter that we're having actually has protected my trees. So that's the one good thing about persistent cold. It keeps these dormant trees into the deepest dormancy possible. So really happy about that. Look, I'm not happy about any of this. We got absolutely crushed this winter, and I've never seen cold damage like this before. But I'm trying to look on the bright side and get some key takeaways here that I can take with me. The first takeaway is that beyond my wildest dreams, these cold protection methods work absolutely incredibly well. And while my trees all got beaten up to some degree, nothing died. Everything is eventually going to come back. So I'm happy to say that while things got banged up, I didn't lose anything. So I am incredibly grateful for that. The second key takeaway is that I'm actually able to share this data with you in real time, because when you see that I live in Zone 8B, a lot of you shrug off things that I can grow. And you say, well, you're still way warmer than me. I have no chance of being able to do any of this. Well, now I just had a Zone 7B winter, the worst I've ever experienced, and everything still held up, including one citrus tree and a few other alternatives that I didn't even protect. And it still is growing through the pain. So this, while it was horrible, because it was so bad, I'm able to extrapolate this and say, as bad as things were, you can still do this. So if you live in Zone 7 and you thought things like this are impossible, they aren't, and this video proves it. And if you're wondering where I got all of my grafted citrus trees that took all of this cold, I recommend you get them from Stan McKenzie at McKenzie Farms in Scranton, South Carolina. If you call him up, you can order the trees over the phone, and he will ship them to you. He grafts pretty much everything on dwarfing trifoliate rootstock, so you can keep everything between 4 and 6 feet in perpetuity, which makes them easy to cover and protect. So shout out to Stan, he's a great guy. Support him if you can. So everybody, I sure hope you found this video helpful, informative, and you learned a lot from it. I certainly did. If you did enjoy it, please make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and please ring the notification bell so you're notified when I release more videos like these. If you want to see all of the different items that I use for cold protection and pruning and caring for fruit trees, I'll place direct links to them down in the video description. For everything else I use in real life in my yard and garden, that is in my Amazon storefront. So expand the video description, click on the Amazon storefront link, and you'll see everything I use in real life. And while you're down there, check out my website, themillennialgardener.com, for all things gardening and custom homemade merch if you want to support my channel. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see all of you again on the next video. Coming soon to a hound dog's stomach near you, we have yogurt with banana, strawberry, and cinnamon. This feature is rated PG, puppy guidance suggested. Are you ready to taste the dessert for tonight? Okay, Dale. So how many stars do I get, buddy? 4 stars. 4 stars. Good introduction and middle part, but the ending was a bit lacking because there wasn't enough.